Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're here to have kind of a mailbag episode, um, touch on different topics. I think it's going to be a fun podcast here where, we asked the subscribers at InsideTheU.com to shoot us some questions. I think it's a good uh, assortment of different types of questions touching on different topics. Before we dive into things, of course, want to highlight Canes Connection. It's Miami's collective, critical part of the program. You need that NIL resource humming, and it's always important in college football to reinvest, reinvest, reinvest. The price keeps going up every year for good players, and so it's advantageous as Miami Hurricanes fans to go support Canes Connection whatever way you can. CanesConnection.com. Also want to highlight our guy, Nick Muserino. If you've been injured in a slip and fall, boating accident, trucking accident, Lyft or Uber accident, any type of car accident, Nick Muserino is the personal injury attorney you should contact. He's the guy I would contact at 561 960 9870 or visit his website at flinjury.law. All right, Gabby, before we dive into the questions here that we got for the mailbag, I just want to address the Louisville game real quickly. For me, you don't have to add anything if you don't want to, but for me, man, and look, this is simplified, right? Podcast is kind of a long form opportunity to get in the weeds on things. But look, during the watch back of that Louisville game, three things kind of stood out to me in that game that hadn't really happened to that point for Miami. The defense started slow, definitely kind of like a sleepwalking performance. Um, I think Corey Heatherman during the press conference on Monday, you can take this or leave this as an explanation. I think he kind of hinted at the giddy up, whoa, giddy up element of the bye weeks and how it was hard to kind of stay in rhythm for the defense because you don't really tackle during practices in modern football now. And so he kind of pointed to that as a reason, maybe why the tackling slipped, maybe why the defense started slow. They had started every other game this year fast, and he, rightly pointed out their issue as a defense before that game was finishing strong in the fourth quarter. So, anyways, the defense started slow. Part of that too, look, you got to give credit to Jeff Brom. He had a good game plan. And it was clear like his game plan was to punch Miami in the mouth, get them on their heels, get that early lead, and see if they could hang on. They went up 14-0. I think in some ways, one thing that also happened in that game that we didn't see was number one, the run game getting really bottled up. And number two, Miami going away from the run game. So, I think to some extent the game flow played a role in that. Miami went away from the run game a little. They should have been a little more patient with it than they were. Um, and then that put a lot on Carson Beck to go out and try and win the game. And that was, why his season at Georgia last year wasn't successful. Georgia asked Carson Beck to kind of carry the offense, carry the load, and he struggled with protecting the football and being an efficient player. And, the four picks he threw against Louisville obviously is a problem. So to me, Gabby is, just moving forward. And look, there's plenty of other things to clean up and fix from that game. But big picture sense, offensively, get the run game going. Carson Beck's at his best when he's throwing off of a successful run game. Carson Beck has to protect the football, of course, um, and then clean up the tackling. And I think those three things are, you know, fair to expect moving forward. Um, and look, Jeff Brom again had a terrific game plan, but I think by and large, looking back at that game, if you don't turn the ball over and if you tackle better, take away some of those Chris Bell explosives. The other thing that happened too defensively was Miami had stopped the run in every other game leading up to that game. They didn't do that against Louisville. So to me, these are things that I do think they can clean up. Louisville got Miami. I think it's really hard to go undefeated in this modern era. I personally didn't expect Miami to go undefeated this year. I thought Miami was going to win that Louisville game, but certainly that was one of those games that, you had circled that they could drop. So I don't know, Gabby, is there anything you want to add? Just whether you rewatched it or thought about it more, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I just think no, nothing too much, David. You kind of nailed it. I think a couple things too. I think I think just like this, like the stagnant nature of the offense. I think just put them in really bad field position too. Like I feel like they had a hard time, like just like the starting field position. I feel like they were all constantly giving it to Louisville in like strong field position, like inside like their 30 or somewhere, or like outside of their 30. And I feel like Miami got pinned back deep so much. Also, feel like in the red zone, what they had to settle for two field goals in like the red zone or red area.
Yeah,
I think once it was outside of the 20, outside of the 25, but it was like kind of right there. And another time, they had to kind of settle for a field goal too. So I feel like like converting those
yeah,
opportunities, I think those points ended up being those situations where they weren't able to convert in the red zone. And I know Louisville's a good red zone defense, but those situations ended up being kind of killer. Yeah, at the end when you just needed 3 points to really just tie the game. Converting one of those situations could have told a different story for the game. So I think that red zone stuff, again, I feel like that's a part of the game too. It happens, but in general, it felt like a lot of the things you said. It felt like it was to kind of put it in Carson's hands. I think Carson kind of forced it when he didn't
he
really
did.
have to. There were situations where the flats were just they were open for not just gains, like for first downs, and he kind of just pushed it. Some of it wasn't on his fault. I think the third interception looked like Matthew McCoy thought a whistle was coming or something. Like maybe they were kind of pointing at Markel Bell that it looked like maybe he had jumped and the defense was pointing. It looked like Mac McCoy kind of started to stand up a little bit. Then they snapped the ball and he kind of got whooped and it kind of resulted in pressure in
Yeah,
Carson Beck's
you
face.
just
And
got to
on a,
eat it though.
yeah, it's a tough situation. Um, so I feel like, I think you can and honestly, those plays were like those were really just good plays by those Louisville defensive backs. Weren't great balls, weren't great decisions, not justifying them, but credit to Louisville for making plays because they made plays
Yes.
on like three of those four interceptions were excellent plays by the defense. The pick that Watts made was awesome. The play that Jabari Mack made on the pick was incredible, and even the one TJ Capers made to like that
Yes.
thing was
Keep it
inches
off the
off the
ground.
ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was just like they just made plays. Like to me, I just kind of walked out of that. It just felt like it was kind of Louisville's day. You
Yep.
kind of got to eat it and move on. And at the end of the day, kind of moral victory talk, but you did have the ball at the 30 with a chance to tie and potentially win that game. So, as bad as Miami played, there was still a chance to win or take it into extra time. So,
Yeah. I
for
mean,
me, I
look,
kind of just scrapped it. Just like, yeah, you know what? This is one of those things that happens, and you just move on and correct, and hopefully you just don't run into a sleepy performance like that again.
losing's unacceptable. I'm not trying to do moral victory type stuff. I'm not. I know for me personally, like I would be more downtrodden following that loss if so again, Miami turned the ball over 4 times. Anytime you turn the ball over 4 times and you force one turnover, the odds are significantly stacked against you. I would be more downtrodden if Louisville was able to get points off those turnovers.
Hmm.
And, that's where the game would have been a really big blowout.
Yeah.
But this defense is for real. I mean, they started slow, but they fought the entire game, coming off those sudden change situations. And the defense is why Miami, this game was close. And anytime you have that type of defense, you have a chance to go out and win. So I was, you know, not encouraged by that, but I do think like I'm not, I feel like if it was, of course, last year's defense and you had 4 turnovers, that game is a 24
Oh
point
yeah,
victory for
easily.
Louisville. And you're really wondering, like, man, was this team just fraudulent? So I personally don't think this team's fraudulent. We'll get into that here with some questions. Let's dive into it now. JV Oliosi asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the confidence grade that you guys have in our ability to go 6-0 the rest of the way? So we're at the midway point. Miami's 5-1, 1-1 in ACC play. What is your confidence, Gabby, that they can run the table here in the regular season moving forward? 1 to 10.
And for me, I'm probably going at like a 6. Just because, you know, I think at the midway point of the season, I think it's just hard, right?
Hmm.
I didn't think this was going to be the game that they lost again. I,
Same.
truthfully kind of got into the mentality of like, I think this team could at least run the table in the regular season. I thought this Louisville game was kind of like the last test, but, the more you kind of start watching who's coming up, like SMU, I think is kind of trending up. I think that kind of becomes a sneaky little tough road game. Pitt,
Yeah.
I think, is playing some quality football. I mean, they
Yeah.
nearly like they
Two
kind of
road games.
yeah, both those games are on the road. They're on the back half of the season. Pitt can kind of play spoiler. Pitt plays Georgia Tech the week before they play Miami. Like if Pitt kind of, if Pitt's able to figure something out against Georgia Tech, who again I think is very beatable, like Pitt can quietly be a huge huge game the last weekend of the season. Like I think they've been playing better football with their new freshman quarterback. They benched their quarterback after a slew of turnovers against
Losing to
Louisville, and they
Louisville.
should
Yeah.
have they should have won that game. Like they could have beaten Louisville. Um, so yeah, to me, I think both those games are tough. Asking him to go undefeated, I mean, to run the table, I think I think they'll be favored in all these games. I think they should, but after they dropped this Louisville game, I'm just not quite as confident that they are definitely going to run the table. I still think that that's on the table, but like
Yeah.
I'm not locking that in for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'd put it at a 5 out of 10, honestly. Like, not because, and I bet you feel the same way. Not because in a vacuum, like in a 1 game vacuum, I think any team remaining on the schedule is better than Miami.
Right.
But it's hard to win 6 games in 6 weeks. It's
Hmm.
just hard to do it. However, like whatever power four teams you want to put in those 6 weeks, it's hard to pull that off. Um, it's also, of course, a war of attrition. Guys will get hurt. It's hard to know how that's going to look, 3 weeks from now. On Friday, we saw Akeem Mesidor get banged up. It's one of those situations where it's like, you can get away with Akeem Mesidor not playing maybe this week against Stanford. Uh, can you get away with that in 2 weeks against SMU? I think it matters against an SMU. What other injuries can pop up, right? Um, I expected Miami to lose at least 1 game this year. I did not think it was going to be that Louisville game. Maybe because it was just like coming off a bye, and I thought, they'd handle business. Um, and so, look, I think it is hard. I wrote an article where I kind of laid out like last year's college football playoff teams, how many of those teams had to play 7 straight weeks of football without a bye week? None of them had to. So, and, only like Oregon and Boise kind of ran the table, if I
Hmm.
remember right.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just hard to do, is
Yeah.
the point.
Do you remember how many games Clemson had to play at the end of last season? I know they kind of I know they kind of snuck
They
in, but I,
had a
I thought I know
bye.
did they? I know they
They
had I know it was a few games at the play road, but maybe it was like 5 or 6. Like I don't
All
think it
those teams
was
had a bye over their
yeah.
final 7 games of the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, so maybe it was like
Um,
5 or 6 that they had to play.
yeah. I mean, they dropped one against Louisville
Yeah,
and then,
I
figured
think
it out from
from then.
there. Um, so, I mean, look, again, is this team on paper better than every other team they're going to face this year? Yes. Um, but that's not how you predict sports. That's not how it works. And so we'll see how they do navigate the season. I agree. Like SMU is a big one to
Yeah.
watch, and Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
big one
I,
to
I don't
watch.
think SMU's lost a conference game since joining the ACC, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy stat,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And like they just
So
went to Clemson and, I think for all of Clemson's struggles, like I think there's something to going over there and beating
yeah,
them the way that they did. They got a good
absolutely.
quarterback. And yeah, I mean to me that's a dangerous game for Miami. We're gonna learn soon. And to me, David, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like there's no margin for error anymore. Like I think if Miami loses again, like they're
Let's
not
go
gonna.
into the next question.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Stavelo Kane asks,
Oh, there you go. Okay.
would you say if Miami ends up 10-2 with another close loss to SMU, that Miami's playoff chances are done?
For me, yes. I think
Yeah,
that Miami has to be an 11-1 team. I do think, and I wrote about this earlier in the week too. Like I think Miami could be an 11-1 team that does not make the ACC championship game and get into the playoff. I do think if Miami goes 11-1, that they're going to get in. I don't know if you'd
I
push back
agree
on
with that.
that. Yeah, I think that. Like even whether they get to the ACC championship game or not, I would almost prefer they didn't, truthfully. Like if I was like just
Yeah,
just
sure.
like I don't know,
I
like
would say it's unlikely. I think if Miami goes 7-1, they're in the ACC
yeah,
championship,
should
most
should
likely.
be. Right. I think it's easy to get
Uh,
caught up in the like all the things that need to happen because there's still so much time. But people are going to lose. Like
yeah,
there's going to be chaos in the conference as there typically is. But me, no, I don't think a two
yeah. You
loss
can't go
Miami
six and
team.
two. We talked about
Nah.
this
Yeah.
all off season.
Yep.
Like you had to go
In the season
seven
preview
and one.
pod. Yeah. Like.
You had to go 7-1,
Yep.
and you know now it's like really we're here.
Yeah.
We're at this point. The ACC has a perception problem, and
Right.
so you drop two ACC games. You know, it's going to be hard to get that benefit of that. Now, I
Yep.
mean, we'll see how it looks, right? There's a long way to go. But let's say you are 10 and 2. Let's say Notre Dame's 10 and 2. That's an interesting
Mm-hmm.
head-to-head situation, right?
Yeah.
Because Notre Dame's going to have all this momentum and there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of push
They're
for
gonna
it.
have 10 straight wins if that's the case.
They're going to have 10 straight wins and they will be, if they run the table and have 10 straight wins, likely they're going to be playing better football at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But Miami has the head-to-head over them. So
Right.
you know, it's going to be interesting. I would just say go 7-1 in the
Yeah. I
ACC.
think 10-2 is too dicey because I think 9-3 SEC teams are gonna get in over a 10-2 Miami
Yeah,
team.
100%.
So
Yeah.
that's the reality of it. Like we kind of saw it last year. I
I
mean,
think 10
Miami
and
was
2
10
Notre
and
Dame
2,
will probably get over 10 and 2 Miami. Honestly,
10
like
and 10
I'm
and
not
2
saying
Notre
they
Dame's in.
should,
Right, 10-2 Notre
but
Dame's
it
in.
will happen, I think.
Yeah, I think 10-2 regardless of anything else, 10-2 Notre Dame's in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think Notre Dame's obviously crazy things can happen, but I don't think Notre Dame's going to lose again. But to me, I just don't think Miami's going to get the benefit of the doubt in this system if they're 10-2. Even if it's like two, quote unquote quality losses or losses to good teams.
Right.
So yeah, I think to me, Miami needs to run the table, and that's the only way that you have any sliver of like control over whether you're going to make the college football playoff.
I agree. Yeah. 6 and 2 doesn't cut it. We've said this
Mm-mm.
all off season. 6 and
Nope.
2 doesn't cut it. Slim Dick Jerry asks, is it time to take away wide receiver snaps from Keelan Marion? The drop off after Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels has been brutal. So this is kind of a big talking point. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
fair talking point
Yep.
following this Louisville game. And look, I'll go on I'll say my piece, Gabby, and you can say yours. But like honestly, I see both sides of the argument with Keelan Marion and then, you know, giving other guys opportunities too, I guess. So let's discuss the pros of Keelan Marion. Number one, of course, I think he's a veteran. Every coach will tell you that experience matters. He's seen a lot of football and he knows how to react to different situations within a game, within a season. He's, being an older guy, he also handles himself, his business like a pro off the field and in preparation for games, like film study, that type of stuff. He also plays hard as a blocker. Like he's important in that. And this year's offense, it's a lot of horizontal passing game to get Malachi Tony going. And so blocking on the perimeter is kind of important uh, from the receivers this season in particular. And look, I think to me, he's at his best as like a gadget guy. Get him some reverses, jet sweeps, end arounds. To me, that's where he's at his best. Maybe even use him a little bit in the quick game. He's not as good at it as Malachi, but he runs tough and he might be able to slip through a tackle and pick up some yards after catch in the quick game. To me, like the cons of Keelan Marion, um, you know, just the production isn't quite there as a pass catcher, right? Which is important at wide receiver. 16 to 24 targets caught for 158 and zero touchdowns. 2 of 7 contested catch he's caught. Uh, so not overly impactful as a playmaker. His average depth of target is like 11 yards downfield. That's further than Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels. It's also further, of course, than the tight ends that Miami's using a lot right now with Elijah Lofton and Bauman. And he's, caught 104 deep shots. So he's getting opportunities to make plays downfield. He's made one on a nice throw by Carson Beck, if I remember it, against USF. But he's just not someone that, in my opinion, like significantly threatens a defense downfield or in the passing game. To me, he's at his best by being a gadget guy. To me, like Gabby, going back to this Louisville game, like Carson Beck, his second pick was a pass intended to Keelan Marion on like a stop and go route. And like you could see it to me on that route, like it wasn't like the most fluid looking thing. And also like judging by Dawson's comments in the press conference this week, he was kind of annoyed that Keelan maybe didn't play defense well enough to make sure that pick didn't happen. So there's that. Now, I do think like Josh Moore shows real promise as a deep threat, and frankly, he gives you more upside in the passing game in general, but he's a true freshman, and so there's going to be some learning curve there, which I think makes some coaches queasy, right? Because you want to know, can I count on you when I put you in a game? I think JoJo Trader is a talented receiver who can get open and make plays, but is he dependable? Will he run the correct routes when, whatever route is called for him to run? Will he do that? Will he prepare like a Keelan Marion during the week, during a game week? Um, and look, I'll stop talking on this. To me, it's kind of more just like a big picture thing than just like Keelan Marion. To me, it's kind of like who is your number three weapon in general in this passing game? Like to me, Lofton and Bauman don't really threaten the defense. Um, and I think Marion's kind of like a fine floor, but is it worth exploring other options like a Josh Moore or a JoJo Trader? Because in my opinion, like to get to where Miami wants to go, they need to try and unlock one of those two guys at least. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at. Like I get why Keelan Marion is the third receiver right now, but I do think they need to start working in Josh Moore and JoJo Trader, particularly Josh Moore in general, to see if they can kind of unlock that next level of the offense of having three legitimate receivers that can threaten a defense.
Yeah, to me, that's the biggest problem. Is it's not even so much like a Keelan Marion issue. Like I think that he has value in what he does well. I don't think that he is like super dynamic. I don't think he's been super dynamic, which is I think they're kind of asking him to sort of be, or it seems like they're creating situations for him to be these deep shots that they're kind of just giving him opportunities for. Like, I don't know if he's the best guy for that. I think we've seen him be productive in some of those jet sweep situations where it's kind of getting the ball. I think he had a big, nice chunk play against Florida State. Like, give me that, Keelan Marion. But I think the
Yes.
bigger issue, like the root of this issue, is that there's just not a third weapon in the passing game right now. And I think it kind of goes to the tight end issue with Alex Bauman and Elijah Lofton. I think Elijah Lofton, whatever is going on there, because we got all the preseason buzz and all the preseason hype, and anyone you talk to was just all in, and it's just like we just haven't seen that. So like I think that that's a piece of an element of this offense that's just lacking the tight end production. I think again, if it's a dependability issue, if it's a preparation issue, if it's a trust issue, it's not a talent issue with like a JoJo Trader or a Josh Moore. Like it's not a question of how talented those guys are. Everyone under the sun knows how talented those
I
guys are.
think
To me,
Josh is just young.
yeah,
I think
I
that's
think,
what it is with
and I
him.
think look, those
But
guys.
I think he'll get up. I honestly, I think he will get opportunity. Like if I'm predicting
Right.
which one of those two will get opportunities in the second half of the season, I think it's going to be
Yeah.
Josh.
And look, and I think this is a good week to insert one of these guys because Stanford,
Yeah.
a great win against Florida State, and we're respecting our opponents out here.
Their pass
Um,
defense is not good.
yeah, this is the situation where you need to start mixing in some of these guys. It's like to your
Yep.
point, like we can't move forward in this situation. Like I think you're just too limited of a passing operation. I think a part of the what defenses have kind of figured it out about Miami, it's like, yeah, you can you like picking your poison with them is clearly kind of stacking the box. And yes, Malachi
Yeah.
Tony is unreal. He is a dynamic, big time talent. CJ Daniels is a good number two wide receiver. And then beyond that, it's like Miami basically has two legitimate options in the passing game, and everything else just doesn't like. There's just no real threat like
Mhm.
in any other aspect of it. So teams are just like saying, "Hey, we're going to key in on this running game, and basically, if we can figure out." If we can basically take away one of these two options, two tough options to take away, there's not really another problem for us to solve in this offense. And so I think the bigger issue here is just like it's not Keelan Murray, it's just like trying to figure out how else you can kind of unlock something else in this passing game that doesn't revolve around Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels because you're desperately going to need it, I think, as the season goes on. Because I think this is the way Miami's going to get played from this point on. People are going to dedicate numbers to this running game, and they're going to have to figure it out. Like if someone has a good, if Malachi Tony, again, has his day, which again, more often than not, he's going to have his way, but there's going to be a time where he might struggle. He might not be on his A game. It's like, what happens to this offense then? So I think this week Miami needs to start trying to figure this out. Like Keelan Marion, I think does a fine job as a blocker, tries really hard, all to your point, David, but I think it's essential that Miami finds answers outside of Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels in this passing game because again, just to go down this stretch, they need to. Like there's no
Yeah.
threat. And you see some of the best teams in college football. And look, maybe it's not fair to I'm not saying that they're I'm not saying that they're Ohio State or any of these teams, but like a lot of these teams have options, right? Like especially like the really good teams. Like Ohio State, they got solid running game and they just have pass catchers and playmakers all over the place. Like I feel like Miami, you can make Miami kind of one dimensional, and the offense has been kind of struggling. Like I think it's struggled whenever that explosive element isn't there. Like I feel like on a down to down basis, it can struggle.
Malachi is carrying them. Like,
Yes.
and
Great things happen when they put the ball in Malachi Tony's hands, but when he's not doing something like
yeah.
incredible, I just feel like on a down-to-down basis, it's gotten a little worse. Like it's gotten, you know, it just because of the way teams are keying on the run game, and we'll get into the run game too. But like I think
The
that's
two
something they
back
need to
stuff
find.
too is interesting because that
Yeah,
kind of takes, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting look, but can you really throw out a two back sets? I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
kind of leads into our next question, kind of too.
yeah. So LL or LI Canes 26 asks an update or a tidbit on the following guys. So, oh, sorry. When a C Note 305 asks, if teams continue to stack the box, do you see us adding in some outside runs, jet sweep screens, or just keep running straight into Brockermeyer's butt? So do you have a take on this? So like me, Gabby, like, look, I think it's important to understand like the foundation of their run game is duo,
Yeah,
right? And
that's it.
so what is duo? Duo is all about like double teams, having an imposing offensive line that can push defensive linemen around against their will, create vertical push. And linemen are, it's depending on the fronts and what the defense presents. But essentially, the linemen are going to double team and try to get to a linebacker, try to get to a second level. The running back, when the running back takes the ball, his job is to confuse or make the strong side linebacker take the wrong gap. And, then the running back changes direction. The running back has to make one guy miss. If he breaks that tackle, in theory, it is a big gain. Um, so, look, I think, and look, from a like run it straight up the butt of Brockemeyer, like, yes, it does look like that often when you're watching duo. Um, But with duo, there's really no fixed hole that the running back's supposed to run through. It can be the A gap, it can be the B gap, it can be the C gap. It's up to the running back to find the right hole to, where the linebacker gets caught up in traffic. And so, that's what Shannon Dawson and Alex Mirabal would tell you as to, you know, explain how, it might look like they're running it straight up the center's butt all game long, but it's really not. It's supposed to be reads of, and the running back finds the right gap, etc. Now, would it also be maybe okay to sprinkle in some different play designs and tell the running back to take this track every now and then? I wouldn't be against that. But I do think just in general, like duo is the identity of the run game in this offense, and that's what it's gonna be. And so, this is coach speak, but it kind of just to me it's just gonna come down to execution. I don't think we're
Mhm.
gonna see anything wildly different.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's just the reality of what we're doing. And look, I think you can get creative. I think if we get creative in the runs, and you've mentioned this a lot, David, like that quick pass to the outside, like that's kind of like their version of outside running. Like that's like almost like that is sort of like their outside run. They kind of
Yeah,
just get blockers and they just get the ball out quick, get it into the hands of, whether it's a Malachi Tony or Keelan Marion or CJ Daniels or someone like that, and it's like it's go. So that's kind of like their outside run. You're mixing in some of the jet sweep stuff. We saw it work with Malachi Tony on the touchdown, the 12-yard touchdown. I think maybe open to seeing some more of that, but if you think Miami's going to start running kind of like the Louisville style of running, where it was kind of like the I don't know, just get to the outside and go. Like, I don't think Miami's running backs are built that way. Like, I don't think they have that super speedy, twitched up running back like an Isaac Brown. Maybe like a Gerard Pringle type could be something like that. And I would be for seeing some sort of change up in this or just like a new look into it. Just
right,
to kind of keep defenses on their, even if it's just for the point of just like keeping defenses on their toes. Like show that you kind of got something else in your bag that teams kind of have to start preparing for, especially down the stretch. And if your goals are to play in the college football playoff, I do think ultimately what this run game comes down to is just being more physical
right,
and kind of imposing your will. That's the line of scrimmage mentality that we've been talking about that this team kind of has for forever since, that this is Mario Cristobal's ideal looking offense, Alex Miraball's, ideal looking run game. It's about getting that offensive line right and just going. I think, and I think it's fair to say, David, too. Like, I think again, if we talk about execution. I think it's fair to say, like, you just need better execution sometimes from the blocking up front. Like, I think I talked about
yeah,
it on the podcast last week. Like, I think guys like a Nez Cooper, like Matthew McCoy, like those guys got to go. If you're gonna run this, like those guys have to be very, very good, especially on some of those like inside stuff. And this is what they rep constantly. You go in fall camp and we talk about, oh, they're in pods. Like when they're in pods, they're basically repping these kind of like duo blocking drills. Like they're doing these combo blocking stuff because they're kind of prepping like for this inside, and then they go straight into inside run, right? Like this is
right,
what they're doing. Like this is their identity. This is the way that they run the football. So it's about just executing this, and it could be frustrating, but this is what it's going to be. And when it's good, it is good, and it does wear teams down if you start rolling. But you got to get to that point where you are rolling. Like you need to be efficient with it so that it can continue to be hard because you can make teams all borderline quit running this, right?
yeah,
Um, but if it's not that, it looks like it can look like this. So yeah, to me, it bordered reality is that it's just going to come down to them executing this style of run better.
yes, I agree. All right, Li Canes 26 asks a few questions, so let's just quick hitter go through it. We don't need to expand super long on these. Um, has Elijah Lofton regressed? Why does he not have a role in this offense? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think a part of it, like, I do think he is maybe banged up. Like, I do think early in the season he had like an ankle hammy type of issue that he was working through. But like, I think at this point, I'm not sure if it's an excuse. Again, the expectation of Elijah Lofton versus the reality of Elijah Lofton are there's a pretty wide gap between what these two things have been. So I don't know if I don't think he's regressed. Like I don't I think he's a talented player. I just don't think this has been what we kind of thought. it was going to be. I don't think internally it's been maybe what they thought that it was going to be from him. I think a part of that could be because he's dealing with something and he's maybe not at 100%. But I think at this point, no one's really 100%, right? Like, if you're going to be out there and if you're going to play, I think it's fair to expect production and execution. And not saying he's not executing, but I don't think we're getting the production from him that we expected. So I'm not sure if it's a regression issue. I'm not sure if it was just a situation where, what we kind
I
of,
think he was hyped too much. You know that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I
Like,
think it's just like maybe the expectations were just too, maybe they were just set too high. And look, he did perform at times in camp
yeah,
and beyond and in spring. And, he can be a problematic type of matchup guy, but it's, we're just not seeing it, right? I think that's just the reality of it. We're just not seeing what we thought, well, I guess even internally what they thought they were going to get from him. So,
yeah. You know me. Like, I thought he was he should be viewed as more like a role player. Because he is, to me, like he's a 6'1", 240-pound H-back. He's a talented H-back, but there's limitations there. And, can you use a player like that downfield, or do you always have to use him in the flats? And you look at him so far, like his average depth of targets, 1.3 yards past the line of scrimmage. And to me, like that's kind of who he is. Like he's a guy you hit in the flats and hope he picks up some yards after the catch for a 7 to 11 yard gain, get some yak that way. So, you know, I think he's better than to me he's better than what he's showing right now. But ultimately, like I don't know how much better. Like I don't think he should have been expected to be like the number 3 receiver on the offense. So I don't know.
I
That's
think
my
that's
take
fair.
at
No, that's
least.
fair. I think that's fair.
Has Justin Scott, in your opinion, not taken the big step the staff had expected? And if not, what is the reason why? Why isn't he impacting the game more, in your opinion? Look, I think it's fair to say like he hasn't taken the step forward that was maybe expected or hoped for. Um, he might be a guy that's like a year away.
Hmm.
And I think to me, the issue kind of mainly boils down to like physicality. He was primarily like a basketball player in high school, and he's still like fairly new to football. And look, sometimes bigger guys just take longer for the light bulb to come on. Like Ahmad Moten hit, it came on for him, what, year 3 maybe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so let's see if it comes on for Justin Scott next year. And look, I don't think he's like a bad player now. I just don't think he's like an impact player.
Yeah, I think I mean, right now he's just, and look, he's still young, right? Like, I know
Yeah,
you see the 5 star and all that stuff, and it's like you
right.
expect instant results, but these line of scrimmage positions are developmental. And to your point, David, like, he was a summer arrival.
Hmm.
And like he was playing basketball. Like he had played basketball that spring before he got there. Like he's a year and change now into basically just like having a true football body. Like and I think he has flash, right? Like Notre Dame, he
Yeah.
made a great play. Like it's not like we're not getting anything from Justin Scott. I just don't think we're getting game wrecker 5 star, like,
Mhm.
no doubt first round pick type of production from him. I still think he's a good rotational defensive tackle right now as a young player. And again, I think he's still someone you work with and you stick with because the athleticism's obviously there and there's talent there. I just think you need to kind of just work with them. Like not all these guys are, instant boom guys. Like I still think that boom is potentially on the table for Justin Scott. I just think maybe it'll be, and look, let's see how the back half of the season goes, but I think that maybe his best football is just still in front of him. But I'm okay with where he's at right now. I think that he could still be someone that helps Miami down the line.
The next question he asks, has Malik Bryant simply been over recruited? Meaning, like, have the younger guys that Miami's recruited after him passed him up? I think that's fair to say.
Yep.
Look, I think Malik Bryant was always at best going to be like a situational pass rusher. He's a tweener. He's a linebacker body type that has to play defensive end. Um, and he's not the ideal body type for a Mario Cristobal line of scrimmage team. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I just think if you're gonna look, if you're gonna be that body type and you're gonna play the edge, like you have to be like super, super twitched up. And I think like
Yeah.
at this point, Booker Pickett's playing over. Like we got Booker Pickett snaps against Louisville on like passing downs. Like I don't know what I don't see the path to Malik Bryant kind of being a
Right.
part of the rotation here, just considering where the rest of the defensive end rotation's at. So definitely think it's fair to say he's been over recruited.
Would you say injuries or something else is the biggest reason as to why Jordan Lyle, and JoJo Trader are non-impact players this season? So I think it's two different cases.
Hmm.
I think both at the start of the year, injuries played a big role in that. Lyle started Notre Dame as RB1, got hurt early in that game, set him back. While he was out, Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown played well. When that happens, and look, Jordan Lyle's a good player, but he hasn't done anything to earn, like, okay, as soon as you're back healthy, you are RB1, no doubt. And so he's got to work his way back into the lineup. That's how I see it at least. JoJo set back by injuries during fall camp. Now he's kind of dealing with like gaining the trust of the staff because he can be hit or miss with executing what is asked of him. And look, this is any coach in the country. If you if you don't go out and run the route that is called on a given play, the no coach is going to play you. So both talented players, both different situations. Um, Hopefully it works out for both. I think Jordan, there's a lot of confidence that it's going to come together in the second half of the season. I think JoJo's kind of a week to week deal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think with Jordan just along that point, I just think when you kind of getting back into back into that, like it's hard to just say, "Hey, Marty and Mark, you guys have been playing
Yeah,
awesome, and we got to mix him in." And I think you want to do that, and I think that also kind of makes it hard for Jordan to kind of get into a rhythm and get into the flow of things. Like I think it will happen, and again, kind of like what I was mentioning, I think this is a good kind of re-implement Jordan Lyle into the running game type of game for Miami, to kind of just re-engage, like get him re-engaged because I think we mentioned it, just the explosive element that he brings is something that's unique to this running back room. Like Jordan Lyle is probably the home run hitter of this group. So I think Miami can use that, but I think you got to get Jordan Lyle back into the rhythm and the flow of everything while also feeding the guys who have been productive in Marty and Mark, who have earned the right to play. So it's a deep running back room. It's a good problem to have. We're years removed from needing to take a Division two transfer at the buzzer to try to just fill numbers. This is the polar opposite of that, where you have three really, really talented players, and there's a third guy that's fighting to get back into the rotation because the other two are playing well. So I expect Jordan Lyle to get back into it. With JoJo, everything you said, nothing to really add there. No notes. That's the reality of the situation.
BC Kane 3 asks, what are your thoughts on development within the program on guys we are evaluating and developing in the 2022 to 2024 recruiting classes? To me, it seems like we are not seeing future NFL draft picks in those classes. I believe we should have 8 to 10 per class if we are doing
Oof,
things right. So, we can go through it, but like to me, 8 to 10,
that's a high bar.
well, that was the case 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Now guys don't stick around.
Alabama and
Yeah,
Georgia.
guys don't stick around like that anymore. So, you know, I would cut that number in half in terms of just like high school guys. Now, if you want to also include the portal guys, which is how it's going, you know, moving forward, then yeah, 8 to 10 per draft class should be expected. But if we
Mhm.
just want to limit it to high school, we can do that. The 2022 class, of course, was Mario's transition class. To me, it's an interesting mixed bag, Gabby, because
Yeah, it is.
to me, this is my opinion on guys who I think will get drafted eventually. I'm not saying this year necessarily, but eventually. I think Matthew McCoy can get
Hmm.
drafted eventually. I think Ahmad Moten can get drafted eventually. I think Inez Cooper, he doesn't have eligibility after this year, but I think he gets drafted late, body
Yeah,
type wise. Um, Wesley Basaint to me probably doesn't get drafted.
I don't think so.
Um, so that's three. And look, there's other guys that they signed in that class that are going to get drafted, but they were just NIL casualties. Isaiah Horton is going to get drafted. He's now at Alabama. Colby Young likely gets drafted. He's now at Georgia. I think Nigel Kelly
Yeah,
has a chance to get
Julie
drafted.
Kelly definitely has a chance to get drafted.
So he's at UCF. So that would be what, six from that transition class, 6 out of 15 in a transition class.
Yeah,
That's really strong, honestly.
yeah,
And look, those guys that left, those were NIL deals. So, you know, debate whether or not Miami should have let them go. They want to put their resources in other spots, particularly as it relates to receiver. So and then the Nigel Kelly stuff was, kind of an interesting saga. 2023, again, it's also early to kind of evaluate it to me with a lot of these classes, but 2023, Maui Noah and Bain are going to be three and done.
yup,
Um, Probably first round picks, both of those guys. So that's impressive in its own right. To me, I would put maybe Mark Fletcher, not this year, but eventually.
right.
Maybe Damari Brown, eventually. Maybe Samson Okunlola, eventually. Maybe Tommy Kinsler. He's certainly got like the NFL body type, but he
Yeah,
hasn't played yet. So he's gonna have to play
possible.
next year and show some stuff. But he's got a couple years of eligibility remaining. So to me, it's like two for sure, and then four maybes. So potentially six, probably going to end up being three or four. And then 2024, again, to me, it's just like too soon to say, but Markel Bell is going to be a draft pick. OJ Frederic, going to be a draft pick. Let's see how Blunt, Scott, and Lightfoot plays out. It's still early in those careers. Jordan Lyle, I would put in that category too.
Yep.
Let's see how that plays out. So to me, it's like two for sure, and then maybe six again. So they're kind of hitting that, you know, six borderline NFL draft picks per class. And I think honestly, most programs in the country would tell you that's a pretty good hit rate. And then you got to supplement that with the portal, and those will boost those numbers in general. But I don't know. I think it's interesting to nitpick this stuff, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, it's more than I kind of thought, as you kind of just go back into it. And a lot of it again is projecting. We don't really know. Um, but I mean, at the end of the day, like even with this 2023 class, which is like the first full recruiting class, like you're getting two first round picks out of that. Like,
Right.
they're
And it's
getting
still only year three. Like,
right, exactly. Like I just think over time, you just get more and more of those guys on board. And and look, honestly, and the way that they just recruit, and obviously I'm not like counting their misses for them, like that's not my intent here, but I do think just in general they do a good job in like the talent identification process. So if the on-field results kind of start coming through, that leads to better recruiting results as far as just like really starting to recruit like top 10 classes and top 10 classes like that I think they are going to continue to acquire future NFL like level types of talent. So that's not really something I'm super worried about right now. But like the number 8 is obviously a huge number, but they're still finding guys who have the potential to eventually be drafted with some high upside guys who will get drafted high, like mixed in there, which is again, it's difficult to do, especially if you're not one of these traditional powers over the last 2 decades.
next question comes from It's Still Go Canes. Guess I'll drop the obvious one on 2027 quarterback recruiting. Where do we go from here? How much of a priority is snagging a top ranked high school quarterback for the staff relative to versus living in the portal? So, first off, there's news, right, with 2027 recruiting efforts for Miami. Take us through that, Gabby, and take us maybe where Miami goes from here.
Yeah, Miami's top 2027 quarterback target was Trent Seaborn out of the state of Alabama. He committed to the in-state Crimson Tide earlier this week. Kind of a gut punch, just because I think Miami felt like they were in a really good position there. to the point where I think that there was like some level of confidence that they could probably get that done. Obviously, that does not happen. He commits to Alabama, goes on to talk about how that's always been his dream school and his dream situation. His family is very closely tied to the Tunga Vailoas, and that's been well documented now. The guys at Bama 247 have done an excellent job of detailing all of that. So Alabama was always, I guess, going to be tough to beat, despite the perception that maybe South Carolina and Oregon were also in the thick of those things from a Miami perspective. Nevertheless, Miami is still in the search for a quarterback in the class of 2027. I think, big picture wise, right now, it's kind of hit the pause button, reevaluate, see what else, see where you kind of want to go from here. You got to make a decision. Are you going to shoot high? Are you going to go after an Elijah Haven type, who's the five-star number one overall quarterback in the class of 2027? His recruitment seems, he's also kind of trending to Alabama. I guess Alabama's going to take two quarterbacks this cycle, David. And, I think, you
How
kind
do
of
you
look
view
around.
that? Did it
I don't,
seem like a race to commit there? Because that's how I view
I
it.
think for Trent
Like,
Seaborn, I think for Trent Seaborn it was.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that was his window to jump in and secure a spot there. And then I think the Elijah Haven thing is quite real too. I don't know if he's about to make a decision or what the situation is. I think he's still kind of going through the process. But with Alabama kind of having a commitment from Trent Seaborn, does Elijah Haven want to be a part of a two quarterback class? Maybe he does. I think when you're a guy like that, you can kind of just guide the ship however you kind of want to go. I do think if Miami goes big, that's probably the most likely candidate that they kind of shoot for, just because his recruitment seems to be outside of this Alabama development relatively wide open. He was trending to Florida, and then Billy Napier gets fired, so maybe that's an avenue that Miami just really kind of kicks this thing into the next gear and really makes a push for him. They've explored Gunnar Rivers, the son of Philip Rivers, as an option as well. Like I don't think that there's been much movement there, so I'm not really sure what to make of that. Otherwise, there hasn't really been a lot of names that Miami's kind of flirted with. So I think it's very much back to the drawing board. And from a transfer portal perspective, right? Look, David, I think it's fair to say after Carson Beck and Cam Ward that this is probably, the world that they're going to live in when it comes to kind of what's next for them at quarterback. I think, in a lot of ways, like this, kind of top end transfer quarterback is kind of mixed into, the budgeting of how the roster is constructed and stuff like that. They've done it in back-to-back years. I think that's always an option, to kind of just do it that way. I think when it comes to, and David, tell me, I've been kind of just working through this in my mind, and tell me what you think. I'm curious what your thoughts are on here. I'm wondering too, just in this era and where Miami is. Let's say you want to play the transfer portal game because it's kind of worked out for you, and you also want to recruit a high level quarterback. If you go recruit a high level quarterback who's not ready to play right away, which I don't think Miami would play a freshman quarterback, no matter how good he is, because I think just it's risky and there's a lot of lumps you kind of have to take with guys like that. Um, but you would also have to commit a lot of money to paying a top end high school quarterback. And
Yep.
then if you also want to commit a lot of money to paying a transfer, I think if they're going to allocate a lot of resources at the quarterback position to a player, I think just the way the podium kind of swings is always going to end up being transfer more so than like five-star quarterback who may or may not end up being good. Because we've seen both sides of the coin there, just in recent years of how those situations ultimately end up. So I think it's fair to say from my perspective, from like the way I see it, it's almost safer for Miami to just go spend big in the transfer portal on a proven quarterback rather than go recruit an expensive high school quarterback and, kind of play that riskier game given the transfer numbers that we've seen over the past few years of how much these quarterbacks end up bouncing around. And how much I think you still want to get guys that you like and that you want to develop. And I think if one of those guys you discover that one of those guys hits, like maybe you can start, maybe you give that guy a chance to win the job, if you really feel confident in someone. But I think until that happens, I think that this is just a safer, more productive direction to go when it comes to sustaining success on a year-to-year basis, where it's proving in the sport that's getting harder and harder to do because of this transfer portal era and how difficult it can be. Because this is like a year-to-year type of game now. Like you have a different team every year. You have 40, some schools have 40, 50 new players a year. I just think that's the reality of where we're at. So I don't know if there's anything you'd push back on there, David, or if you have anything that you want to add.
I mean, I'm all about the portal. I think, listeners of this podcast kind of know that. And, look, I think to me, like one way you can derail your season is you miss on your quarterback. And I think you can mitigate that risk by going out and getting a proven commodity at quarterback. At that position, like experience matters. And, uh, you don't want to find out, to me. Now, there's going to be years maybe where you gotta play an inexperienced quarterback, but ideally, if you don't have to, you don't want to find out on the fly how a quarterback handles adversity or bounces back from a bad interception or understands how to play the cat and mouse game that comes with identifying different coverages during the course of a game. Um, to me, like Miami went out and beat Notre Dame this year in the season opener. Notre Dame's a very good team. Notre Dame has a very good quarterback in CJ Carr. I think a big reason why Miami won that game is because Miami had an experienced quarterback in Carson Beck, and they knew they could trust him to go out and just play in that first game. Whereas Notre Dame had to kind of like, uh, you know, they had to just kind of let him settle into the game and, trust him to uh, execute easy, simple game plans. So, um, look, I think you look at like, I think it's also just the way of college football now. Like, uh, you look at the top 10 in the country right now. Ohio State features Julian Sayin, who technically transferred from Alabama. Indiana features Fernando Mendoza, transferred from Cal. A&M, Texas A&M, Marcel Reed, he's a homegrown guy, high school guy. Alabama, Ty Simpson, homegrown guy. Georgia, Gunnar Stockton, homegrown guy. But then the rest of the top 10's all transfers. Dante Moore, Oregon, transferred from UCLA. Georgia Tech, Haynes King, transferred from A&M. Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss, transferred from Ferris State. Miami, Carson Beck, transferred from Georgia. Vandy, Diego Pavia, transferred from New Mexico State. So 70% of the top 10 is led by transfer quarterbacks. And I'd rather be on that side of it than the other side where you can just beat your chest that, oh, we
Develop the quarterback.
developed a quarterback and essentially like kind of got lucky, honestly, doing it because the numbers of just plugging in a transfer are much more impressive than like homegrown quarterbacks in nowadays. So to me, you significantly mitigate the risk by bringing in a transfer quarterback, and it's what I would do. So
Yep.
uh, let's go. So next question, Miami Knight 11 asks, what positions should Miami target in the portal? I think you and I would both start with quarterback.
Definitely.
I don't think they need a running back, but
No.
I mean, again, we'll see. Like,
Right.
I don't
Based
think
on the current construction of the roster.
I don't think
Let's
Mark
see how.
Fletcher should go pro. I mean, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see how the rest of the season goes. But
I don't think
like,
I mean I don't think he will, but yeah, we'll see.
um, wide receiver, to me, like slot is set with
Yep.
Malachi. Let's see if Josh Moore takes the next step. I'd still like to add maybe one outside receiver.
Yeah, I would always just take another guy there.
Tight end to me's fine. Like you need
Yep.
those young guys to step up, but I think they will. Offensive line's fine to me. I mean, they've been taking centers. I don't know. Do you think they'll take a center this year?
I think it's on the table. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know that they definitely will. I think it also. I think a few things depend, but I think they could figure out similar to this year. I think there's at least four guys that you feel like are going to play on the offensive line, and
Yeah.
honestly, they could probably just get away with not doing it if
Yeah.
depending on what it is, because Jackson Cantwell's probably going to play. So I think just depending on how some of these other situations play out, whether you go get another guy or not, but I don't think they need to. If they do, maybe like a depth guy, like another just body.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a young guy that you can kind of just stash and continue to work with, or just just a security blanket type. But yeah, no, for me, I think the next biggest one would be like just like interior defensive line, and
I'd
that's
put DN too. I think you need a guy with some juice.
yeah. If you can get an elite dude, I think if you can get like a stud, which honestly is probably going
They
to be on
show
the
up in the
table.
portal. They
Yeah,
show up.
I think that's going to be on the table. Um,
And yeah, D tackle to me, like they just need more depth. They need
yeah,
big
they haven't
bodies.
recruited it well
They
enough at
need
the
a
high school
couple
level. I think that they
David
should go.
Blaze,
I think they
you know.
need like two or three David Blaze.
Yeah,
I would dedicate a lot of resources to that situation and like a premium pass rush type because I mean you're seeing like what David Bailey's doing at Texas Tech. Like there is so much
right.
value in going out and getting a star edge rusher in the transfer portal. Um, so we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I think both those positions, I think kind of Keontae Scott's showing how important that nickel is. I think a nickel, like a true nickel, I think is still really important.
Yep.
If no one clearly,
Linebacker too. I think they need
yeah, I'm curious about
a
how some of these
couple.
young, I think how, yeah, I mean, it depends how they feel about some of these young guys, but I think that that could be on the table as well. And then I think corner, you're probably good.
Corner, they're good.
And I think maybe a safety. I think you
I
can
would
make the
take a
argument
safety.
just like that, like a another depth type of
You
guy.
need a third safety,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. That's depending on
Because
how you feel
Poyser
about
and
Bryce.
Fitzgerald comes
Yeah,
back,
and
but you
then if
still
you
need a
can,
third.
yeah, I think you need another quality safety, at least one. So yeah, that's about where I'm at. And then I guess kicker. You could probably go back get a kicker.
Yeah, right. All right. Two more. Rodney P88 asks, when it comes to landing high school talent, can you rank which are the most important between, and he lists four categories: NIL, on-field success, position coach, recent player draft history.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I think this is a tough question because I feel like every situation's different. Like I think it depends on like what program you're
Yeah.
talking about, right? But I think for Miami specifically, David, um, I think on-field success matters because I think when you're winning, that's the easiest way to recruit top talent is by having a really good program, right? I
More than
still,
NIL?
I mean, I mean, I think NIL always matters, but I think like if you have, if you
I think
just have
NIL is number
NIL,
one.
yeah, okay, so I think Miami's, yeah, I think it can be. That's what I'm saying. I think it depends, right? I think where Miami's at right now, I think like again, you can have the money to spend, but guys still need to kind of want to buy. You're gonna be able to get guys, but I think to get like to some of these to this like elite like next kind of category, this next level in this recruiting stuff. Yeah, NIL is important, but I think at some point you have to kind of show these kids that you're gonna win. Like I think if you want to,
Yeah.
if you like, you got to be able to pay them, and I think that that's really important. But I think
To me,
to
that's the first hurdle, though.
what
To
is
me,
the NIL?
you got to clear that threshold first.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. I think from a Miami perspective, so how I'm viewing it is kind of just like what Miami already has. Like I think Miami already has NIL. So I'm not worried. Like I don't think that it's just like they have
Yeah.
these things, but they don't have the NIL. So for me, I know Miami has the NIL. So I'm feeling for the way I kind of just like frame the question in my head. Because again, I think there's a bunch of different ways you can attack it. Just big picture sense, yes, you have that. You have to have the money, right? Like you have to have the money. But I think from where Miami's at right now, like if I'm thinking, how does Miami kind of take this next step in recruiting, or how can Miami elevate where they're at right now from a recruiting perspective? I think they need to win. I think when you win, you attract all these types of dudes. And then I think even just I think NIL, of course, and I also think just the way that you put people into the draft, because I think when you kind of establish yourself as a program, like Miami's about to put Ruben Bain in the first round of the NFL draft, and I bet they're going to be able to attract a top, like they've done a good job there. But I think whether it's in the portal or whether it's at the high school level, like they're going to be able to attract an elite level pass rusher. Like I bet they're going to be
Probably
able
for
to,
the portal, but what
right.
about
And
high school talent? So, like to me, like I think everything you're saying is fair. To me, man, I still think high school players care a lot about the relationship with the position coach more than they should, honestly.
right. I think it matters. I
I
think
think
all,
they care more about it. Like, oh, I'm tight with this high school coach. I don't
oh, for
think
sure.
they necessarily look at NFL draft because that's 3 or 4 years away. And they all assume they're going to the NFL draft, no matter where they go.
I guess.
I don't
I
know.
just think when you have those things and it's obvious, like I just think it makes it so much easier. Like I think it makes the rest of it, like if you have the on-field success, if you say, "Hey, we've won 10 games in
Yeah,
5 straight seasons and X amount of guys have gotten drafted at your position." Like I think if that's your starting point, the NIL and the other stuff kind of becomes like I think the NIL, obviously if you have it, plus that other stuff, it's obviously next level. But I think if you start your pitch with, hey, we're gonna win, we're gonna get to the college football playoff, we're a contender in our conference every year, and we're putting guys in the NFL, if that's like the basis of like all that stuff, and then you're saying, hey, we all, and then you go from there. The kid's already going to be super interested because of that, and then I think the NIL factor obviously kind of helps you take it to that next level of like we can actually get this kid, and then the position coach stuff to me is just like maybe for me it's just like it doesn't really matter if the other three are in place, but yeah, maybe some kids do care about that
I
stuff,
think
but
high school does. I think
maybe
Portal cares about draft. I think
yeah.
Portal 100%.
I guess maybe that's just how I would structure it in my head. Like, because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
because you even see there's some schools, David, like, and you know, I mean, you know this, like, there's some schools that can get away with like underpaying kids. Like, you're like,
Yes.
often the team that obviously pays the most gets the kid. But there's also situations when you're a school like Ohio State, because they have the on-field success, because they have the draft history. If they're recruiting a wide receiver and you're recruiting a receiver, like they don't have to pay as much for that receiver to get him to campus. Then you have to pay way more than Ohio State to get that kid to campus
Mhm.
more often than
It's
not.
a tax.
Right, it's a tax. So that's why again, for Miami to kind of take that next step, again, just the way I framed it, I think getting those first two things right, getting those first two things going, having the NIL, which we know they already have, I think is something that just kind of elevates it to that next level of just like I feel like that's just a huge plus. But getting those first two things right, I still think is really, really huge in this era.
Mhm.
You got to be able to pay the kids, of course. But I think when you start winning, you start putting dudes in the league, like that is huge.
I agree. I agree. I would rank it NIL first, on-field success second. And if we're talking high school talent, I think position coach matters more than NFL draft success. Just high school guys want to know, like, is this guy gonna,
For sure. They definitely do care about that stuff.
yeah. Last question's a fun one. Excuse me. Albert 1985 asks, if you could choose one college quarterback to portal into Miami next year, who, has eligibility for next year, who would it be? Go for it.
You want me to go first?
Rip it.
I'm gonna rip it. So my pick is Cincinnati quarterback Brendan
Oh,
Sorsby.
I'm a fan.
Um,
Okay.
just an experienced guy. He's been a 3-year starter. I think he started at Indiana. He's been a starter at Cincinnati these past 2 seasons, playing at a different level this year than he's
He's
played in years
improving.
past. He's getting better. He's a big dude. He's mobile. He has 340 rushing yards this season, 6 touchdowns, averaging 5.9 yards per carry. He's 17 touchdowns to 1 interception,
Mhm.
over 1,700 yards for the season. He's going to throw for a career high by a wide margin by season's end. He's going to surpass his touchdown totals by a wide margin. Again, he's played in, I think they played 7 games. He's at 17 touchdowns. His career best is 18 touchdowns, way down on in the interception mark. Um, Again, he's good with his legs. To me, I'm a big fan of this kid. He'll be next year. He was going to be his fourth
Last
year.
year.
He
Yeah.
has last year, and he would be a fourth year starter at that point. Kind
hmm
of and has kind of leveled up. Indiana obviously wasn't that good when he was there. Has gone to Cincinnati and they've been respectable. They're having a really good season this season, and I think he is going to be, if he chooses to come back to school, which he should, he is going to be a hot commodity in the transfer portal.
I like that one. So I broke it, like I wrote an article on this like 2 weeks ago or so. I listed 10 quarterbacks. So go check that out, insideyou.com. I think if you search like who should be next, look at 2026 quarterback portal options, Miami, it should pop up on Google. But he was one of the guys I listed. And I like all those things you name, right? One thing, like I do like the mobility factor because,
Hmm.
man, like some games, you just need a quarterback that can get some yards with his legs,
Yep.
keep a defense honest that way. He can run. He's 6'3", 235.
Big dude.
The other thing I like when I look at potential quarterbacks in the portal for next year, I want to see what they do when they have a clean pocket, when they have good protection, because we know Miami's going to give you good protection, right? So how lethal are you in those opportunities? When Sorsby has been kept clean this year, he's completing 70% of his passes at 10.2 yards per attempt with 15 touchdowns and one interception. So he gets it done in uh, clean pockets. And I think so Miami's gives Carson Beck about an 80% clean pocket rate on dropbacks, on his dropbacks. I think Sorsby's around 70. So, at Miami, he would get even more clean pocket dropbacks than he would at Cincinnati. So I kind of broke this down into tiers. He's in my top tier of guys I like. So I'm with you on Sorsby. I would be a fan of that. The other two, are guys with potentially multiple years of eligibility remaining. One is a local guy, CJ Bailey, NC
Mm.
State. I think he's intriguing as well. Similar guy on a nice trajectory. 6'6", 215, live arm, mobility's pretty good too. To me, he's again on that nice trajectory. He's thrown for 1,800 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's run for 279 and 5 touchdowns. Um, a lot's on his plate at NC State. He's kind of their whole offense. NC State's not that good this year, but he is a guy that stands out for them. And again, going back to the clean pocket stuff, when he has a clean pocket, he's completing 78% of his passes at 9 yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns, 0 picks. His he has a clean pocket on 68% of his
Mm.
dropbacks at NC State. So that would increase at Miami as well. The other guy, Jaron, I don't know how to say his name. I'm curious if you do. Jaron Kiwi
Yeah, I know just know how to say the Sagapolotele.
Sagapolutele.
Sagapolotele. I don't know the middle part.
So JKS
JKS. Yep.
at Cal. He's the reclassified true freshman, former 5-star guy, transferred from Oregon, right? Or
Yeah,
decommitted from Oregon?
signed with he was committed to Cal for like a long time. Flipped to Oregon, signed with Oregon, and like quickly hit the portal. Like I think he was in Cal by the like that winter semester, that spring
Yeah.
semester. So he signed in December and like he basically I don't even know if he ever got to campus. Maybe Oregon's in quarters, so maybe he did like a semester at Oregon and then he was immediately at Cal. So
So
kind of a transfer, but not really.
yeah. He's an intriguing like ceiling guy because like he's a true freshman and he's still kind of working things out, but man, he flashes an elite ability to push the ball downfield.
Mhm.
So if you give him weapons, it's gonna be like, I mean, he's a different quarterback than Cam Ward, but it would be that type of, explosive passing attack type of offense if you give him elite wide receivers to work with. Not even elite, just good wide receivers to work with too. He's thrown for 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's kept clean. On 80% of his dropbacks, he's completing 65.9% of his attempts with 9 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. Sorry, he's kept clean on 70% of his dropbacks. Again, he's not the most mobile quarterback. Um, and he is a lefty, which I think is an issue for some offensive coordinators. Um, but I think he's a talented guy. Like the easy comp, honestly, is Tua, and I wouldn't even push back on that. Like he's like a bigger Tua, just lefty at the college level. Like we're talking Tua Alabama, not Tua
Right.
Dolphins. Tua
Yeah.
Alabama, like pushing the ball downfield accurately, willing to be aggressive. So those would be kind of the three guys I would bring to the table. Honestly, like if you made me pick one, and we haven't even really talked about this, I would pick Sorsby.
Yeah, Swordsby to me is big time. Another one that I would be, I mean, I think this is probably not in the realistic realm, but someone that I would just be like kind of all in on is Jaden Mayava. But I honestly think he's going to end up going pro.
Jaden Mayav is an interesting one.
I think
Rocco
he,
Becht, what do you think of him?
yeah, but I mean, he's fine, I guess. He wouldn't be my favorite. He wouldn't be my favorite option, but I could talk myself into it.
Yeah. Mobility guy,
Yeah,
collegey quarterback.
weapons, like, yeah, I think
Yeah.
you get him weapons. Like he was good with, when he had Jaden Higgins and
Right.
Jalen Noel, or Noel, not sure what that was, but um, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, he would be probably my B.
Right.
maybe C, top of the C tier category for me.
What about like, do you have an appetite for DJ Lagway?
Um, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather someone else
I'm with
solve
you.
that
I'm kind of
issue.
like, I don't know.
You
I
know
mean,
where I,
I
you know,
wouldn't be against it, but it's just
yeah.
kind of like,
Honestly, DJ, and this might be crazy. So forgive me if I sound a little ridiculous saying this. Like I don't mean I kind of get like Connor Wegman vibes, where it's just like everyone was like, this kid's all world, and then it's just like it never really looked the
yeah,
way
that's
everyone said it
interesting.
was gonna look, and then
Yeah,
just kind of ends up at a G5 program at Houston, and like maybe he does okay, but like just maybe that's just a better fit for what he is, and it's like, all right, you're maybe a solid,
I can
okay
see it.
college quarterback, but to me, that's where I think I just. And we've said this, like I just feel like the hype I just and like the reality of the player just to me don't match. And so I would rather just punt on that one. If that's the best situation available, like hey, again, we'll
Yeah,
talk I'll talk myself into this, but um to me he's not he would probably be in my lower tier B category.
right. So that completes our podcast. Appreciate everyone for listening. Fun little mailbag episode. We will preview Stanford this
Oof,
Saturday.
the Cardinal.
Miami will look to get back on track. Stanford coming off a big win against
Big
those
win.
No Boys. So
Oof.
they are coming in with some momentum.
ACC after dark.
Yes. So we'll get out of here on that note. Appreciate everyone for listening. And until next time, take care.